Transpiration is the process by which green plants lose water from their surface as vapor and thus cooling itself down. So transpiration is a way of regulating its body temperature. Now let us do a simple experiment in order to see if green plants actually does transpiration. For that, take a potted plant and take an empty pot with soil in it. Keep these two pots in sunlight. Now pour some water on both the pots and cover the soil surface in order to prevent evaporation of water from the soil surface. Now clip cobalt blue papers in both the setup and enclose it in a bell jar to prevent the vapor from evaporating. Now after a few hours, it is seen that there are droplets of water on the walls of this bell jar and this blue paper has turned pink, whereas this blue paper has remained as it is. Let us go over this experiment once again. Well, we had taken a potted plant and another empty pot with just soil in it. Now, we had watered both the pots. Next, what did we do? Yes, we had covered the soil surface with a polythene wrapper to prevent evaporation from taking place. Next, what did we do? Yes, we had clipped cobalt chloride papers. Now, what is the property of cobalt chloride paper? Well, cobalt chloride paper is blue in color, but when it comes in contact with water, it turns pink. So, both the setups were enclosed in a bell jar to prevent the vapor from escaping. Now, after keeping both the setups in the sun for a few hours, it was seen that the paper, the cobalt chloride paper in the potted plant setup changed its color from blue to pink. But the other cobalt chloride paper, which did not have a green plant, did not change the color. From here, it is proved that transpiration takes place in plants. Plants transpired, giving out water. The water formed droplets on the walls of the bell jar, and the water had also transformed the color of the cobalt chloride paper to pink. But in the other setup, there was no green plant, so there was no transpiration. So no droplets had formed on the bell jar, and eventually there was no color change in the cobalt chloride paper. Now, greater the leaf number, more is the transpiration. So leaf is the transpiring machinery. Now, why did I say that greater the leaf number, more is transpiration? This is because there are these pore-like structures known as stomata on the surface of green leaves. And through this stomata, transpiration takes place. So greater the number of stomata, more will be the transpiration. So we've seen that greater the size of a leaf, more will be the transpiration, because greater the size of the leaf, more will be the number of stomata as well. But what about the desert plants? They cannot afford to lose so much of water in the air, because there is little water available in the soil. So their main aim is to retain as much water as possible. So what do? Well, they adapt themselves and they reduce their leaves into spines. See? So if the leaf size gets reduced, the number of stomata will automatically decrease. So transpiration will be lowered. So this is the adaptation that xerophytic plants in the deserts do. These adaptations are not only present in xerophytic plants, but are also present in some plants like the banana plants, which have leaves bigger than usual. Even these plants need to conserve water, and for that they have a thick waxy covering on top of the leaf known as the cuticle. See? Now, this cuticle covers the stomata on the surface of the leaf and thus reduces transpiration to a great extent. But some amount of transpiration still takes place through the cuticle, and this transpiration is known as cuticular transpiration. Now, stems of woody plants have openings on them known as the lenticels. Now, the speciality of lenticels is that unlike the stomata, which opens in the morning and closes during the evening time, these lenticels are always open. So some amount of water is lost as water vapor all the time. So this mode of transpiration through these lenticels are known as the lenticular transpiration. So we learnt about the 3 ways of transpiration. Stomatal transpiration, that is the maximum amount of transpiration takes place through the stomata. About 80 to 90% of the transpiration is stomatal transpiration. Next, we studied about cuticular transpiration. Cuticle is a thin, waxy layer that is present on top of the epidermis that covers the stomatal openings, thus reducing stomatal transpiration, but some amount of transpiration can take place through the cuticle and hence cuticular transpiration. Finally, we talked about lenticular transpiration, the transpiration that takes place through the lenticels or the openings on the stems of woody plants.